I'll try this time not to adjourn us before we get started. So we'll convene the meeting for today. And starting out, what we want to do is just as a reminder, the RS number has now switched into a bill number. So it's House Bill 2737, just for everybody's reference. And with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Research, Jordan, to explain Free State 3.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jordan Milholland, Legislative Research. The technology, okay, there we go. I was going to say the technology is just a bit behind getting this document up. This map is Free State 3. It is a House of Representatives plan, as Representative Croft had noted. Before I get into the map, I wanted to just give a plug again for the KLRD website. On the KLRD website, under the redistricting page, we have a link where you can view all of the proposed and enacted plans. That includes congressional, state legislative, and later the State Board of Education plans when we work on those. And you can find this packet on there as well. The entire packet is 357 pages of data and maps. I've not printed that for the committee today, but I did print a couple of the reports and some maps that I'll be going over. So again, this is the Free State 3 House of Representatives map. At the bottom of the first page, I wanted to also point out that for the major metro areas, we've included a list of some of the districts found there because not all the numbers appear on this zoomed out map. So we've got a map of western Kansas, and I need to zoom out just a smidge here. So we've got western Kansas, we've got central Kansas in the packet, Dodge City and Garden City, Hutchinson, Salina, Sedgwick County. We've zoomed into the city of Wichita on the next page, Manhattan and Junction City, Leavenworth County, Topeka, Lawrence, Wyandotte County, Johnson County, Emporia and Pittsburgh. And after that, we've got the population summary, which is another page. After that, that's the next page for the committee that I've included today in the materials. I just wanted to go down to the last page of that population summary just to briefly cover the basics of these maps. So again, the ideal district population is 23,503 persons. This map has a range in population of 22,688 to 24,327. The mean deviation for the plan is 1.55%. What that means is they range from minus 3% to positive 3.51%. And then finally, the last report that I've included in the materials that I handed out this morning is the Incumbent Report. So this shows the current House incumbents and then what district they're in the new plan. And on the right-hand side, it also includes their previous district. When you scroll through this report, if you see any legislators that are marked together as being in the same district, of course, that means that both of those members reside in the new district, whichever district is mentioned on this page. So we've got 2 districts that have incumbents, 3 districts that have incumbents in the same district. And again, there's another summary of that at the bottom of this page. And I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions, Representative Hoheisel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jordan, for that breakdown. One quick question. I had an inquiry from a constituent that is asking for a more detailed map with a map underlay. Is this the only map we have available? They were looking for more detailed with streets, especially in the city of Wichita.
Thank you, Representative, for the question. So currently, this is what we have produced for the map. I will note that later this year, whichever map becomes law, we will produce an atlas For the legislature, that includes each individual district, and I'll be zoomed in just on those districts with more of the streets labeled. Um, this map, you can zoom in and look at some of these streets on here. And if you do end up needing a higher resolution copy of this, I can always send that out as well to you for the whole packet.
Okay. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions? Okay, you got off late. All right, maybe not.
Sorry, Jordan. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. On the line up here, a couple of questions have been the yellow line with the dotted green in it. What does that represent?
Thank you, Representative. So it looks like it's the city boundary of Wichita. Some of these green lines, I'm not sure if they're county lines. I guess we can look at the key here. So those are voting district lines, but then the city boundaries are those yellow checked lines.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Jordan, the voting district is what again? Is that a precinct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is also the equivalent of a precinct. It's the county subdivision for voting.
Okay, county subdivision. And again, just a reminder, what is the basic building block we were going with?
Yes, so census blocks are the basic building blocks of these maps, and those blocks cannot be split. However, the blocks can be rearranged as needed for the map. So they can either be a whole voting district, a whole county, or it can be blocks. Those are generally the pieces in the maps.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? No? Okay, so with that, we're going to go ahead and go to testimony, and I'll just go down the list here. We have, you said Michael Papa, he's moved to written testimony. Okay, so that'll be in the folder. And we've been receiving some testimony this morning. There were some emails, and we went ahead and put that all in the folder so you'd have everything that was accessible or that came in, and we'll continue to do that. So the next one's going to be Connie Brown Collins. Online or here? Oh. Welcome, and we'll shoot for about 4 minutes, and we'll go from there. Okay. Oh, I was just saying we'll shoot for about a 4-minute time limit, but we'll go from there. Yes, ma'am.
Representatives. Oh, thank you. Representative Croft and committee members, my name is Connie Brown Collins. I'm with the Voter Rights Network of Wyandotte County. I want to thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. However, I really don't know whether I'm in opposition, support, or I'm neutral about the Free State map. I have not had enough time to review the map adequately. I'm leaning heavily toward opposition, I will say that. But I just can't tell much about it without adequate time to review it. I need to be able to compare apples to apples and kind of look at a before and after comparison. I need a detailed look. I need street names, area names, communities, key landmarks like schools, hospitals, parks, things that comprise communities and neighborhoods. I do know that Argentine is now split totally in half along Metropolitan, and this splits the Hispanic Latino community of Argentine into 2 representatives, which is very confusing and does not serve the community well. It really doesn't matter how long and how easy the scheduling of the testimony is when you have less than 24 hours to review and process the maps. It's really, really a horrible and useless sham of this process, this respectful process. All Kansans deserve a fair redistricting hearing and process. There should be time to review, time to compare, and time to speak to communities before these hearings, and that has not been the case. Is there such a horrible potential outcome that this procedure has been sabotaged in this way? You know, what are the fears? Why are you trying to make the process more difficult for constituents? Are our votes so intimidating that you need to suppress them or squelch them? We're supposed to vote for our representation, for the elected officials that have our best interests in mind. That's the way our system is set up. If voting districts are not drawn fairly in a nonpartisan way, our votes and our voices are at stake. If your vote was in danger of being discounted or eliminated, wouldn't you want a fair, transparent, and fully engaged public process? We want no less. Please know, though, that we will persevere. We will not give up. Like the Ukrainians, we're proud of our cultural heritage and our multicultural and multilingual county. We will keep fighting. We'll keep coming back with renewed strategies. We're like the Energizer bunnies. We never lose our power. Please lengthen and slow this redistricting process to allow time for proper review and response to the maps. It's really the only American thing to do. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Next up will be Thomas Witt. Welcome, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. Tom Witt with Equality Kansas. So most of what's in my written testimony you've all heard before. So as one former representative used to say, I won't belabor the point. However, when he said it, that was your cue for 20 minutes right there. So what I've been saying since last summer is representation matters, and that includes representation for the LGBT community. There are 4 openly LGBT representatives in the House, and 3 of the districts seem pretty good, but the 4th one really did a number, took it from kind of a north-south district through central Lenexa and Olathe, and cut off the lower 2/3, and it's now a long district that heads out towards DeSoto. And the demographics have significantly changed, and it's going to be, so the District 30 as it is right now, where Representative Woodard serves, is a swing district. I don't think the new District 30 is going to be a swing district. And what's really troubling about this is you put the new 108th district, and it takes up most of the old 30th, and you could very easily have kept his demographic balance without disturbing any other incumbents' seats by including more of what you're now putting into the 108th district and a lot less of what's out in the far west part of Johnson County. It's pretty disappointing. It's in your power to draw these districts fairly, make sure people get represented. And it's also in your all's power to not be quite so fair and make sure people can't come back. That's all I have to say. If you have any questions, I'm happy to stand for them.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not do that last time. Anybody have any questions for the conferee? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
And I can go back to the first conferee. Did anybody have any questions for the first conferee? I should have asked. Yeah, Representative Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not so much for the conferee herself, but if they view the maps online, is it correct to say that they can go in and get a lot of that detail that she asked for or not?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jordan Milhon, Legislative Research. If you look at these maps, the packet that I showed you all, it depends on the map that you look at. Some of the metro areas are more zoomed in where you can see more street names. Some of them where there's only 2 districts maybe for a town that we have an individual map for. That's more of a broader overview of that town. So it depends. We do not have landmarks necessarily marked on these maps just to keep it from being quite cluttered, I guess, if you could say, because the more things you add to these maps, the harder it is to read them. So right now we've got voting district lines, we have city lines, we have major streets, we have the boundaries of the legislative districts marked, and we also have it marked where the incumbents currently live on these maps.
Is it also possible, and I think this goes back to where Representative Hoheisel was coming from, that there can be an overlay of here's what it is today, And here's what this map does. Is that overlay possible?
Thank you, Representative. Yes, we could create a map for you like that upon request to show you some of those lines. I would also say too, we have the shape files available for anyone who requests it, and they can import those shape files into whatever software they're using. Even some of the free software allows you to import the shape file, and then you can zoom in and turn on the different features available in that software to see where things lie as well. So that's also an option.
Okay, and then one last question, Mr. Chairman. When I look at Wichita, and I thought we understood the yellow and the green slash lines is in the 105th. I don't understand those lines because there shouldn't be 1, 2, 3 towns there.
I got it. I got the answer to that. No.
Hey, Jordan, he thinks he has the answer to that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative
Representative Landwehr, those are, I believe, the unmarked or unannexed parts of Wichita that we have Sedgwick County land within the side of Wichita that has not been annexed into the city yet. We have all those throughout Wichita. It is a problem with the city level, but I believe those are county lands that have not been annexed into the city yet.
Yeah, but I think it's important for us to, have
Yeah.
that clear so that people understand when they're looking at these lines, because it made zero sense to me.
Absolutely.
Now, what the representative just said makes perfect sense. So, thank you.
Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I speak with the first conferee, please? I would have asked the question, but I thought we were going to go through them first.
Yeah,
and
I
then
know,
come
and
back,
I should
so
have done
my
that up front.
apologies.
No worries.
Thank you very much for being with us this afternoon. You indicated that you hadn't had basically sufficient time. I feel your pain. We didn't have much time on these, and I agree. And the representative asked the questions about the difficulty in reading the maps. Is your concern is probably multiple, but is it basically if you had more time, you could study the maps, and if you could read the streets and the landmarks, it would make it easier for you to look in terms of what's been moved and where you no longer have all of that information is, and maybe it is a little bit of, I don't like this process and what you're doing and everything else, but is that really your complaint?
Yes, in the past, we've had a chance to do an overlay, and the zip file did not work for us. We really tried to use that to try and get more detail of the maps. And I zoomed in and zoomed in and zoomed in, and it really didn't do anything but distort, the lettering more. And so we really tried. I mean, I was up very late trying to read the maps and just didn't have enough time, to try to do an overlay or anything to try to look at a comparison of last time versus this time, as well as trying to get some bearing in terms of parks, landmarks, schools, hospitals. You can get that in other map programs.
Well, I thank you for that. I want a clarification because I think that is a legitimate concern. If we put them out there for you and you're not able to really access them, we had a little difficulty. I'll just say I had a little difficulty on that end, and I went to someone who really knows how to do this, and it did take a while. So I think that is a legitimate complaint, and I thank you very much for coming to let us know that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Our next conferee, unless there are any other questions, right now is Sherry Grogan, and that's on the WebEx. And for the committee members, I believe she's gonna show up a graph. The graph is not in the testimony, we're asking her for, if she'll send it to us, we'll make sure it gets uploaded later on today. So with that, Ms. Grogan.
Chairman and committee members, I live in Leavenworth County, west of Basel in the current House District 38. And in this map, I would also be in House District 38. I am testifying in opposition to Free State 3. The first concern is that including all of Fort Leavenworth in one House district gives citizens more power per vote than in other House districts. Most of the Fort Leavenworth voters vote in the military population, vote in their home district, not in Kansas. I'm going to share a graph here. And so this graph, this pie chart, the three smaller pies represents the fort population. This is voting age population. And so those three smaller pieces of the pie are 37% of the total voting age for the total 41. And what I'd like to illustrate here then is that the military on the base is 74% of the fort, and the fort represents 2 precincts. And then the prison, this would be the federal penitentiary, as well as a federal prison camp that's on fort, represents 26% of the fort population. And in 2020, we only had 1,200 registered voters off the 2 fort precincts, and only 40% of them voted. So basically, people that run in the 41st, they have a pretty good chunk of people that they don't have to campaign to because they aren't registered in Kansas or they're just not eligible to vote. I stopped sharing. That's everything on that. The second point is that the Leavenworth community of interest is now split across multiple House districts. And I'm concerned about the piece of the 38 that is in the middle, that kind of snakes over into the middle of Leavenworth. Leavenworth, that portion of Leavenworth City has more in common with House District 41 and 40 than it does with Basel, that's in House District 38. The third point is that the Leavenworth Unified School District is split across 3 House districts now. And in the House District 38 that I'm part of, that includes Basel, we now have Leavenworth High School and Henry Leavenworth Elementary School. That is no longer part of the Leavenworth or Lansing House districts. Lastly, I'd like to thank you for incorporating several key points from my previous testimony about keeping Lansing High School with House District 40, keeping as much of Basel-Linwood area together as possible, excluding Johnson County from House District 38, and keeping both sides of the County Road 1 corridor together. I appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony today. Thank you. I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Are there any questions? Oh, Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ma'am, for your testimony. As to your first point relative to the prison and the fort, what's your suggestion on how to address that issue?
It's currently the 2 fort precincts are split across House districts. So as much as possible, if you can spread out the populations, it is helpful because it more equalizes the non-voting across the House districts rather than packing them all into one House district. And you do have to keep in mind that House District 40 has a prison as well. So we already have the prison in Lansing Correctional Facility in the 40th. So currently the 2 prison precincts Fort Leavenworth precincts are split between the 41st and the 42nd in current environment.
Thank you, ma'am. And this is a comment Mr. Chairman, it may or may not be accurate, but I'm not sure in our consideration, we're allowed to consider voting. We have to stick purely to population. Can we correct me or pat me on the back on that from research?
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, in this process, it considers just flat population. So the ideal district size was calculated by taking the state total population and dividing by 125.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, just as a reminder, there used to be a provision in the state constitution that adjusted the U.S. Census data to account for populations such as military installations and colleges and university populations. That was amended a few years back to remove that adjustment, so now the state is required by the state constitution to use strictly the U.S. Census population data.
Thank you for that. Representative Esau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And that was what I was going to say too, that we're going to see some possibly dramatic differences in a couple of places because we're counting people that used to say, no, I don't live here, count me back in my home state or my home district. And it's going to change some of the lines a little more dramatically than maybe we would have expected.
Representative Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm pleased that we got the clarification, and I appreciate Representative Miller bringing that forward. These are the consequences that we don't foresee when we make the constitutional changes that we do in reference to policy positions. There was a comment made in Leavenworth, and I want to thank Sherry for her presentation today. She has been one of the best in advocating for her community and how this constitutional amendment has affected their community. And so I understand her concerns bringing it forward with the voices, and I don't want to mispronounce what it was, but I think it was prison underrepresentation. There was a comment that was made at the Leavenworth meeting that I think caught a majority of us off guard, not realizing how that constitutional amendment was going to impact Leavenworth. And so now we see the impact it has, because it is really unfair that other representatives are held to a higher voting by population versus those that have a minimum voting turnout versus those that get more because we've impacted the population. So it may be something we want to look at or reconsider as we move forward, Mr. Chairman and body. So I think it's not only Leavenworth, I think there may be others that may be impacted as we go through these, but I just want to say thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions? Okay, with that, we'll go to the next person on the list. It's Jeffrey Howards. I believe you're on WebEx as well. Thank you, ma'am, for your testimony.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. I've been a Leavenworth County resident for over 20 years, and I currently am the chairman of the Leavenworth County Democratic Party. And I wish to provide the following testimony regarding the redistricting of Leavenworth into districts 38, 40, and 41. If you look at your packets, I believe this is covered on page 11 of the Free State 3 maps. We in Leavenworth have previously testified before the committee that it is the wish of the people of Leavenworth to maintain the integrity of the city in one district as much as possible, with the boundary line for District 41 being located as far south in the city as possible before joining with District 40. As the population of the city has little in common with the military population of Fort Leavenworth, we had suggested removing the fort from District 41 and placing it in District 42 to free up the population cap and allowing more of the city of Leavenworth to be maintained in one district. Currently, nearly half the fort is already in District 42, and the move would simplify the representation. The fort has been more than adequately covered by Sherry Grogan in her excellent discussion. It's apparent with the Free State 3 maps that our concerns were ignored. The city of Leavenworth has been subjected to gross gerrymandering. Not only is the city still divided between Districts 40 and 41, but now a finger reaches up from the southern end of Leavenworth County to include one precinct from the center of Leavenworth into District 38. Coincidentally, that one precinct happens to be the precinct that I and a majority of the local Democrats who are highly vocal in opposition to Representative Proctor just happen to live in. If I were paranoid, I might believe that our precinct was purposely cherry-picked so as to remove a majority of the opposition from District 41 in an effort to muzzle us. None of the proposals we previously submitted even considered cherry-picking one precinct out of the middle of District 41 and sending it down to the Kansas River with District 38. If the slicing of Leavenworth into 3 districts was driven by population limitations in Districts 40 and 41, then moving Fort Leavenworth to District 42 would resolve that issue. District 42 is primarily low population farmlands. This process would maintain the integrity of the affected areas of the city of Leavenworth, unify representation for Fort Leavenworth, as well as making the precincts within the districts contiguous rather than grabbing one precinct out of the middle of the district and slapping it into another district that it has little in common with. An alternative would be to leave the precinct in question, Ward 6, Precinct 5 in District 41, maintaining the continuity of Leavenworth as much as possible and simply moving the western boundary of District 41 east, adding to District 42 until population is balanced. The gerrymandering of Leavenworth needs to be stopped, with population numbers adjusted according to Districts 38, 40, and 41 through movement of the southern or western boundaries, not through cherry-picking the one precinct that is a thorn in the Representative Proctor's side. And if you look carefully at the map on page 11, you will see the one precinct that it reaches in and grabs. I thank the committee for this opportunity to speak, and I am available for any questions you may have at this time.
Thank you, sir. Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The material that was provided to the committee, these insets for the urban districts are really helpful. It would be very helpful if we could get one in addition to these for Leavenworth. It's hard to follow the testimony without that.
Acknowledged. Jordan, did you have something? He's going to put it on the screen real quick. I know it's following the testimony, but at least you can see what he's talking about. The question was whether we get it printed. We will.
Sirs, if you look at the area between Limit Street and Lecompton and Ohio Street, that is one precinct. That is Ward 6, Precinct 5. And that one precinct is cherry picked out. It includes Leavenworth High School and Henry Leavenworth Elementary School. And it is, as I said, it is a residence for a majority of the opposition to Representative Proctor by coincidence.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, that's all the folks that are listed as to testify. Is there anybody from the audience that would like to make testify or provide any input? Okay. Seeing none. All right. Okay. All right. That closes the hearing. So what I want to do now is, let's see, just making sure. Now, I haven't heard, I listened to some other committees, so I didn't do any introductions of other maps. I didn't hear any introduced in the exempt committees unless I missed out. I didn't hear that. Trying to see my glasses. I apologize. Lost my glasses. I'm on some make up ones right now. I'm having to read. Also, the last thing is renumbering. There was a lot of discussion last time. I was really interested in how much there was about that. I would actually volunteer the representative, but I won't do it right now unless somebody wants to volunteer to lead the team to do the renumbering and come up with a proposal for the committee. Not that we're looking your way, sir. Representative Miller.
I think I've already pissed off most of the legislature, so I'm willing to take on that task.
Okay.
Actually, I've already begun the task as soon as Jordan gets me a bigger map.
Okay, fair enough. Anybody wants to help out with that? I'm sure he'll use the encouragement as you go along in that process. Would love to have that. We have had many discussions on different ideas, even a fundraising one, but we'll leave that one alone, won't we? Representative Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this goes without saying. In renumbering them, you don't touch the existing ones. You just add additional ones.
Well, no, actually, they're talking about taking all the numbers away and starting from scratch and moving across the state. Or different ways. There's different ways that are being looked at right now. You could look at city centers first and then fill around that. You could do just straight left to right. You could go zigzag.
So if you're 105 and 105 has been around for 35 years and everybody in town knows it is, then all of a sudden that person could be 20.
Could be. Although, and it's just a proposal. There's a lot of, I'm sorry, Representative Landwehr.
Thank you, Representative Ballard, for choosing my district for that example.
I'm glad you noticed.
All right. I will note that 10 years ago, when the judges drew the maps, there was a lot of renumbering that was done. For example, I went from the 91st district to the 92nd district, and the 91st district went way north of me. So if we can't come to a decision in this body with both chambers on maps, it'll be 2012 revisited. We won't have to worry about renumbering. We won't have to worry about where reps live, because as I stated the last meeting, R's were drawn together, D's were drawn together. We had R's and D's that were drawn together. And I think that's why it's so important for us to try to come to consensus, which actually 10 years ago the House did. It was the Senate that was having a problem. And if you look at some of the shapes of the districts today, they're wonky because of them being drawn by the judges and not by us.
May I comment?
Yes, ma'am.
I think what my concern really is not so much with the individual legislator getting a different number, but the community that's used to having certain numbers in their town. I'll just use mine as an example. We know we have 44, 45, 46, 47. We know that's what's out there. And I think that's what people, they may not know who their representative is, but they sort of know I'm in the 47th or I'm in the 46th, and they know that. So when you take that away and give them new numbers, I think that may prove to be very difficult for those individuals, because now they're confused, not only because their number changed, but everybody else's number around them did. So since we're talking about it, I thought I would just add that, because people gravitate more towards numerical than they actually do to names. I want to make sure that we're not doing something that is not in the best interest of the community.
Right. And I think that was some of the discussion last time too, was about, as some districts have moved around the state, looking at, just using Johnson County, since you have 78 in there, you got 121. It starts at 14. So there's a lot of moving in, and the question is this the right time? So we had a lot of discussion about that, and this speech right did that. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Representative.
And we did talk about this last week. I would agree that certain areas, Johnson County, teens up into the 30s, South Central, 75 to 100, you could work with the existing numbers and still minimize renumbering everything and simplifying that just to where you're moving districts like the districts that have moved into Johnson County in the hundreds. So if we're going to tackle it, let's minimize the impact as much as possible.
Yes, sir. And recognize, we've already recognized your number to be 14 now.
Yeah.
Just messing around. Just got it. Acknowledged. Any other comments on that? Okay, thank you all very much for the time today. We'll meet, oh, wait, Representative Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to cause some mischief. Speaking just for myself and understanding that we have a long way to complete this process, I want to thank you for what appears to be a earnest attempt to be as fair as possible. Others may not agree, but you received my input. You took most of it into account. I still have some minor changes I'd like to discuss with you, but I do appreciate my perception of the fairness that you've included in this process. So I thank you.
Thank you, sir.
If that doesn't get you in trouble, I don't know what will.
Yeah, thank you. Did you have some? Jordan? Thank you, sir. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jordan Milholm, Legislative Research. I just wanted to say that we're having some copies made of that Leavenworth map. So for anybody that would want one, they should be up here in a few minutes, I believe, and we can hand those out as people would like them.
Okay, thank you very much. Representative Landwehr.
Mr. Chairman, since how we've already got our one member to help with that renumbering, which I believe is Representative Miller, if Representative Ballard would do it, I would assist her so that we do it right.
Oh.
That puts you on the committee, babe.
I'm more than happy to do that. And if I may have it,
Yes,
may I ask, though, of the first conferee's complaint or concern that she had, did we come to some conclusion of what we might do to make it easier for her or anyone else that's reading the maps?
Yeah. Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you. This gives me an excellent time for a plug for those who are online. There's a professor at WSU. I want to give him a right shout out here. His name is Brian Amos, and he uses a redistricting website called davesredistricting.org. And he just within the last 20 minutes, half an hour, has retweeted a link to the map on the redistricting, Dave's redistricting website. It gives a very detailed breakdown. I'm looking at my district right now. I see one thing that I would like to discuss with the chairman after we adjourn. You can zoom in to house levels. If you're on Twitter, his Twitter tag is Brian Amos. I will retweet it and also post it on my Facebook page. You just click on the link, and it's an excellent resource that a private citizen has put together. And you can get very, very detailed in the breakdown of the districts. So,
all right. Well,
and Representative, I'm just getting a thumbs up from the back of the room that access to that file. So good to go.
Okay, now I'll get it from you too to make sure I have it.
absolutely. If I may, Mr. Chair, could I send it to our staff, and then they can email it out to the whole committee? All right, thank you.
Oh, this is great cooperation. Honestly and truly,
Absolutely.
I'm serious about it, and I appreciate it very much. Thank
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, you, okay. I was looking over there. I thought you were trying to point. Representative Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just trying I know it's difficult at times to, this is a difficult process that we're going through, but I really do appreciate the dialogue today from the committee members and from the community that did have input. I would hope that we have an idea as to what the process will be in the next handful of days. In reference to working bills, looking at amendments. I know there's been some comments about people still want to visit with you. I think that's extremely important after we take testimony. So, Mr. Chairman, could you lay it out for what our agenda might look like in the next handful of days?
Yeah, I was about to do that. So perfect question. So right now we're on schedule for having to work the bill tomorrow. We have some things, obviously, and that will be dependent. So let's plan on, we're going to be here tomorrow at noon for working the bill. However, I am going to listen to what you guys had to say. Some of you said you have something to tell me after this. I listen, and we'll see how we can keep on that agenda and keep moving. I know there's another amendment to be presented tomorrow as well. So that's the idea. And then if it has to go from there, we will continue because we are on call of the House for Friday as well. I'll call the chair. Sorry, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm somewhat remiss for not being better at finding this. What is the bill number?
Fair enough. Let me get my glasses back on. 2737. Yep. That's a great question. 2737. I had to ask him it 3 times earlier too, so I'm good. Yes, Representative Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think while we were talking and congratulating the chair on reaching out to members of the committee and to our colleagues, I do want to acknowledge the work of staff also. I mean, Jordan and staff have listened to many, I'm sure, complaints and questions, and they have been very welcoming to, I know, to myself and others that I've visited with. So thank you. I know this is a marathon and not a sprint. And but thank you for your patience with us and in the timely manner in which you're trying to get information turned around. But we're still going to be needing you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I have a comment from Jeffrey Howards on WebEx. Would you like me to read the message?
He was one of the come for
Yes, he said, please note that I also had little to no time to prepare testimony. I received the maps late Monday night with a suspense of Tuesday to submit. This left me no time to staff my testimony so as to provide a better input.
Yep. Fair enough. And just to reference that comment, there actually was no due date, no suspense for testimony. I was accepting it right up. And in fact, while we've been receiving stuff here, we're posting and putting it in there. And for anyone else that has other comments they want to make, continue to send it in. It's important to go ahead and send it in, and we'll look at it and go from there. We'll share it with the rest of the committee. I too would like to thank everybody for your comments, your engagement. I know we're not done. We're right in the middle of the process. So I know there's some more to come. So let's keep working hard to do the right thing for the state of Kansas. Thank you guys. We're adjourned.